Welcome back to Riders of the Dawn. Today we are doing a review and analysis of The Dark Tower, the movie.
Yeah.
The Stephen King adaptation.
or is it the Stephen King adaptation?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows? Okay, so this general impressions. Your expectations will determine to a great degree whether or not you enjoy this movie.
Yeah. So one thing I said was, if the movie has some elements of the Dark Tower universe and has nothing to do with the books, I'll probably still be okay with it. And so I was still okay with it.
Yeah,
because
it had about as much in common with the Dark Tower universe as I Am Legend had in common with the book that started it. And if you know that comparison, it's like there's very little. There's characters from the book. The story is nothing like what you get from the books. So there's a big expectation. If you're expecting an adaptation, like people are like, how are they going to do the entire Dark Tower in one movie? The answer is they did a different story.
Yeah, they didn't. It had nothing to do with the books.
It had nothing to do with the books other than the characters are pulled out of the books. Three of the characters. Jake, Walter O'Dim, Roland Deschain. There's only three characters that are pulled out of the books. Everything else is different. Go into it with the expectation that you're going to see something new that has those characters. That's going to be a more appropriate expectation.
And you'll probably have a pretty good time.
Yeah. Now, I will say there's one little hint in the movie that...
I didn't see it.
Yeah. So, Roland is carrying around the horn of Arthur Eld. So, he doesn't have it in the book, but there's a meaningful... They put that in the movie as like a little nod to the fact that they...
That it has nothing to do with the book.
It has really nothing to do with the book series that you know and love. So, if you don't go to those expectations, you're good. Now, what are some valid comparisons? Now, another thing that you have to depend what you're comparing it to. So, let's compare it to the first Transformers movie.
Oh, it was fantastic.
It was amazing.
It was Emmy nominatable. Is that a word?
No, the Emmys are the TV.
Oscar nominatable.
It's at least Golden Globe. People's Choice Award, for sure.
People's Choice. Mm-hmm.
People's Choice Award, for sure.
MTV Movie Award, for sure.
Kids' Choice Award, the blimps. I don't know if they still do those. So compared to like something like Transformers, yeah, it's good. It's a summer blockbuster movie.
Yeah, if you compare it to any summer blockbuster, it's
actually,
worth
you know,
going
it's
to
like
see.
a summer blockbuster from like 2000 is what its production style is like, because you're like, oh, it's like a summer blockbuster. It's like I went and saw, if you go and see the next Marvel, you go see whatever the new Spider-Man 12 that just came out. Spider-Man reboot number 4.
Infinity.
It's like you probably watch that and you're like, what's happening? It's amazing. Like, it's more like an old style blockbuster movie from maybe, it feels, actually, now that I think about it, it feels like a movie that's been transported from like the year 2000 to the year 2017. It has a lot of the has the same editing from like 2000. It's about a 90-minute movie.
The editing is really tight.
Yeah, it's really not as tight as a modern movie, but there's less crap crammed into it, so it feels like a movie from 2000. Yeah. So overall, I had my expectations pretty low, and I think it met those expectations, not in a bad way. I mean, I think I enjoyed it for what it was, which is a little action horror movie, I guess.
And not only that, if we're talking about what to compare it to. If you compare it to Stephen King's body of work, you're going to be disappointed. It's not a Stephen King, like Stephen King didn't write it.
And it had
4 screenwriters, which was a big problem. You could tell that it was not a pure vision from beginning to end. It kind of
wandered in
its own way. Yeah.
There's a lot of flaws to the movie, but it just depends on how willing you are to accept those flaws.
The Dark Tower.
See what it is.
An extremely flawed, enjoyable movie.
Yeah. Much dependent on your expectations. Yeah, I think that's a general impressions. Now let's talk about production.
Okay.
So production elements were good. The costumes, it's really hard to not nail the costumes in this because it's like cowboy, right?
Yeah. Not only that,
people in New York.
Stephen King nailed, like, he describes what Roland, he describes what Roland looks like in great detail. Yeah. And as far as the costume is concerned, he
nails it.
They do a great job.
There is a good detail that, like, most of the artists for the books miss, is that Roland doesn't have his hat in the books. And so Roland in this movie doesn't have his hat. He does have the horn. So the production, I think the production elements were overall good. It's not a special effects heavy movie compared to most movies. Yeah, compared to Transformers or any sort of modern
or compared to
blockbuster movie.
World of Warcraft.
Yeah, compared to World of Warcraft, it's like this was shot on a smartphone.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and there's actually some scenes that it's like, dude, we could have shot this on a smartphone in my backyard, where it's like the location's so tight, it's just like a couple trees around you, you know.
And the things that were really effective in it were the portals that they used. I thought those were really cool. How they looked like they were stretching space time, and then they were just portals.
Yeah, those were a cool, effective thing. You get to see Thunderclap, and Thunderclap looked kind of cool, I guess. You get a couple of scenery pieces of like the ruins of Midworld.
Yeah.
But
you also get like Kansas.
Yeah,
old Kansas from like the Stand.
Oh yeah.
Kind of where you see all the amusement park roller coasters in the background. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that is kind of cool. But I actually think there probably wasn't enough of that. We needed to see more scenery, and we'll talk about that when we get to story. The score was okay. The score, mostly, I didn't notice it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it was good or bad, but it's like I didn't pay any attention to it. That's probably a good thing.
Mm.
You know, it's not thematic. It just adds, it's an atmospheric score. And so that works. There's a couple CG creatures. They looked good.
They looked good.
Yeah. And part of it was the way that the cinematography framed them, so that they're pretty dark. It's kind of like an alien movie. You don't see the whole creature. You do kind of see the whole creature, but it's always like a piece. Yeah, it's like, you know, the head and a wing.
It's very dark, and so you're not upset with the amount of detail they show. So it's not revealing too much as to look fake.
It hides enough that your mind fills in the details with whatever horrific thing you want there. So overall, I think the production was plenty for the story that was there.
The one thing I didn't like about they did CG a lot of like the bullet reloads.
Oh yeah, they did some bullet time stuff that was a little dumb.
That was pretty cheesy.
And it was cheesy, and that was probably not a great decision.
It just wasn't, because you didn't need to see those kind of visual elements to understand Roland's character, like how badass he was. It just felt like, well, I imagine this thing happening where Roland flicks his magic Excalibur revolver as all 6 bullets are perfectly aligned with the cylinder, and clicks it back into place and starts firing immediately.
Yeah, this is a movie that will enrage gun nuts. Yeah, it's total gun noob movie.
Yeah, the gun
nothing
pedantry
makes
was
sense
like,
when it comes to guns. Like it's. Yeah. And you just kind of have to accept that, like, Roland's a magical creature and can do things with guns.
And because I'm not a crazy gun pedant, I was okay saying, Roland is magic.
I let it go because I'm like, it's supposed to be a fantasy movie. I know that, so I'm not gonna like get all upset that it's like that the guns are not functioning the way that they're supposed to. Yeah. You know, the fact that he has double action revolvers that are modeled on a single action revolver, somebody's gonna really notice that and be like, the cylinder is popping out on what is obviously a single action revolver, and actually is modeled on a black powder rifle, black powder revolver, which would mean you'd have to load each cylinder and put caps in. Like, but whatever.
Well, and that was one thing that I noticed, even in my level of gun noobishness, is how fast he was basically firing them like they were semi-auto.
Yeah, they're going fast.
They were going fast. And which, again, he's magic.
He's magic, so that's what you have to,
it's like,
be okay with.
It wasn't like in Force Awakens where she Jedi mind tricks someone and immediately I'm pulled out of the story.
And that's kind of a, I mean, we can transition to story. That's kind of a problem with the movie in general, is that we don't have a good establishment of what power levels are. We don't have good expectations for how powerful any of the characters are. So we don't really know what they're capable of or what they're not capable of. And sometimes they do things that are surprisingly powerful, and we're like, I guess he could do that, because we don't have a good idea of what they're doing, and it kind of takes a little bit of the tension out of it. Yeah.
So especially like we made this example when we were in the car on the way home, was at the beginning of Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings, there's this perfect scene where you see Zeth going through and perfectly showcasing magic.
Yeah, all the magic that exists in the universe.
You see how powerful someone could possibly be, so that later on in the book, you can when someone does something powerful, you
You're not like, what? Why did that happen?
Yeah.
That's dumb.
But in Dark Tower, it was like, well, we understand that Roland is supposed to be powerful because we kind of got these flashbacks, but we didn't actually see him do anything.
We didn't have no reason to believe why he's that powerful. And that's probably kind of a flaw. Well, maybe we can transition into adaptation. I think that's kind of a flaw in the approach of the movie makers, is that if you're really familiar with the material from the books, then you're not going to be as out of sorts by watching the things that are happening on screen because they aren't really explained within the movie.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with that, I think you're going to have a worse review than if you are familiar with it. But at the same time, if you're really familiar with it, maybe you'll get upset that it's a really bad adaptation.
Yeah, that the story has nothing to do with what happens in the book.
Yeah, it's not an adaptation is the wrong word.
Yeah.
It's like inspired by.
Yeah, which it says at the end, this movie is inspired by.
No, it said based by. It said based on.
Did it say?
Yeah, I watched really carefully. I'm like,
it's
based on, not inspired by. But yeah, it should be more closely to like inspired by. So, sort of like the Hobbit movies, right? Yeah. It's like based on the Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm like, man, you're using based on really liberally.
Yeah.
It's like there are characters from the book. There are some plot elements from the book. In this case, there's just characters. There's no plot elements from the stories whatsoever. It's a brand new plot.
You have setting pieces,
and that's actually kind of cool. If you're familiar with the books, this will be a new. You won't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's like a new.
So that's kind of cool.
A new portion of the universe.
I guess that's an unexpected benefit.
And if you look at it like the setting as a character, which it's not, but the setting as its own piece, it is familiar to what you read in the books. The problem, and one of I think the biggest flaws in the movie, was that we didn't see enough of the setting. And because we didn't see enough of the setting, we didn't really get to know other people's motivations very well. We didn't get to understand why. I mean, we understand that the Dark Tower is. Here's a little spoiler: that the Dark Tower is protecting.
They tell it to you in like the first minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
not
really.
So the Dark Tower is protecting the universe somehow.
The multiverse.
Excuse me. Yeah. Multiverse through magic, basically, and that's why they need to save it.
Different from the novels where the Dark Tower is the multiverse. Yeah. The Dark Tower is existence. Yeah. This is like a thing that's protecting existence from like demons or something. Yeah. So they kind of like, they mess with mythology a little bit to their... Yeah, but we don't see enough of the setting, I agree. So, and we don't see enough of the setting in a bunch of ways. So we don't have enough of the setting to understand what's possible and what's not possible. We don't have enough of the setting to understand why Roland is the way he is, or what his father was like. There's like one scene of his father dying, and it's a really awkward scene. When you watch it in the movie, you'll be like, why is this happening? Why is he acting like this? Why are these two talking? There's a lot of why is this? And it would make more sense, I guess, because you might be familiar with the books, but it really doesn't reveal enough of the setting for you to understand Roland at all, where he comes from, what his past is like. So Roland is just an actor rolling through a plot. Midworld is 2 set pieces. It's Thunderclap, actually 3. There's Thunderclap, and then there's like this town.
And I guess I imagine the town a lot like the town that Roland destroys in the Gunslinger.
Yeah. And the town, well, it's like a town from Fallout 3.
Yeah, and you have
like.
and
not really like an Old West kind of town.
And what I imagine is like slow mutants, basically running through the town, attacking it at the end.
Yeah, they were Taheen, which are like the bird people, and it's like.
Oh, but you can't even tell.
Yeah, they're just like.
Tell.
They just like had masks on. So yeah, that was a thing. Like there was some, like the costumes for like the. Actually, yeah, and let me go back up to productions. Here's the problem with the costumes: is like you never see the rat people. They never like have a rat costume, which is like or really, so they never reveal what's below the masks.
Yeah, you never see really
the Taheen either.
Yeah, you don't see any of the creatures. I noticed in the credits it was like Trophy Vampire Wife 1, and I remember thinking
they were vampires.
You
don't even see fangs. Yeah, like there's dudes that are. I'm like, I think that guy's a vampire because he's from the Pig and Whistle, right? Yeah. And it's full of vampires in the books. But they don't even put like fangs on him. He doesn't be like, like I'm a vampire. Vampires. I'm familiar with that. I know what that is.
You know, it's like vampires aren't.
He's a guy who like licks the button. He's like, oh, it's a kid who has the shining.
Yeah, and like vampires are
He has
somehow
shine.
relevant in this incarnation of the multiverse, right?
Yeah,
they're not.
They're like a footnote in the books because you're just drawing on because Father Callahan
is
from
Salem's Lot.
which has vampires in it, and so I don't know. It was kind of a I don't know.
That was just something that if
Wasn't explained and didn't make sense.
just saying vampire trophy wife, I'm like, what?
What?
Why?
Who was that?
Who?
I think it was the girl standing next to the dude with the
Yeah,
gray beard, and I think
thought
the
he
dude
was-
with the gray. He looks like me. He looks like me.
Well, he looks like you, but with my hairline.
Yeah, there you go. And so like he didn't even show his fangs, so that's a bad thing with the trope. But
And honestly, I thought he was a werewolf because of his eyes.
oh yeah, I can
So-
see that. See, that's the problem. This is
like-
the problem. So yeah, that's the problem, is that there's not enough of the setting for you to understand the characters. Characters live in their setting, and the plot is acted out by the characters. Now, what they chose to do, actually, as we I guess sort of transition to the story, we don't have an understanding of Midworld. We're just kind of watching things happen in it, and I think that robs a big part of the magic of Stephen King's books. Midworld was a really cool place and really interesting, and we wanted to know a lot about it, and Stephen King kind of withheld a lot of the information about Midworld and revealed it slowly. We just don't get enough Midworld. They chose to...
All we see is just a dystopian version of our world,
Yeah,
which is like
it's just Fallout 3.
yeah, it's kind of
And
it's-
they even
it's-
mention like radiation sickness. It's like, so it's Fallout 3.
Yeah.
He lives in Fallout 3.
yeah, he lives in it's New Vegas.
He lives in New Vegas. Cool.
Yeah.
So they did something very interesting with this movie, and that they chose to do a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court as their plot reveal device, rather than having it begin with Roland, who's the primary protagonist in the books. So it begins with Jake, and Jake is in New York having bad dreams about the Man in Black and the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
And he's like psychologically disturbed, and he's seeing a psychiatrist, and he's saying, I'm having these dreams. I'm having a dream about this guy. I'm having a dream about this guy who I think is a soldier. And then finally he ends up in Midworld. And then we're in the desert for like half a second. And then Roland's like, I know some people that are seers, will go see him. And it's like, why then? If Roland could just leave the desert, why was he wandering around in it?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Why would he be there?
Which makes no sense.
So it's a story problem, but it's also a production problem, which is the movie they made is not the movie that they marketed, nor is it the movie that
They delivered.
that would really capture the market that Dark Tower fans are, the demographic that Dark Tower fans are, because Dark Tower fans are Stephen King fans. And
So predominantly adults.
And this movie was produced as, it's really like a YA film.
Yeah, it's a young adult kind of film. The viewpoint character is Jake, a boy.
Yeah.
A young teenager. And it's about his adventure and his experience and his revelations, and we're viewing everything through his lens. That's why I called Connecticut Yankee King Arthur's Court. Because you have the Connecticut Yankee go to King Arthur's Court to ask all the questions that you yourself would ask, because you are a Connecticut Yankee.
Yeah.
And so that's a really old device used in fantasy way too much. I get real tired of it. I would rather have an author at this point have the skill to give me all the exposition that's necessary for the universe without having to subject me to a modern perspective in order for that to exist.
Well,
Whenever it pops up, I just get kind of tired of it.
Which was why
shut the book.
Which is why the Gunslinger was so captivating to begin with, was because you just get dropped into the world and you have to deal with it.
Yeah, it's Roland's view of Jake, which is like, this is this weird kid. The Man in Black pulled him in from another world to try to distract me, and that's it. You know, the original book is very stark and very bleak and very, very atmospheric, and this movie is not atmospheric. It's an action-packed young adult. It's like Transformers in Dark Tower world.
Well, I was going to say it's like
focuses on the teenager.
It's like Insurgent. What was that? There's a young adult franchise. I think it's called Insurgent.
Divergent?
Divergent. It's like Divergent, but with gunslingers.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like to me.
So, yeah, to me, I thought of Transformers because it's like, oh, this boy gets swept away into this cosmic conflict, and
then gets arrested for being drunk in public in Georgia.
Yeah, I will say...
Wait, that's Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, so that is kind of how it felt, and that's a really uneven tone. And by the end, it kind of switches to be more about Roland and his growth journey from revenge-seeking, angsty
cowboy man
to virtuous gunslinger at the end. So, so the characters. Talk quickly about the characters.
So
since we talked about Jake.
So this thing about Roland, you really don't realize this until they're kind of having dinner in this Fallout 3 town, which is one of the townspeople approaches him and says, "Is it true you started this portal? They're going to come and destroy us." But the mayor of the town says, "Well, he's a gunslinger, and I can't refuse a gunslinger.
It's the law.
It's the law." And then.
But we don't really have a good explanation of why that's the case.
But then
because we don't have enough to say.
But then Roland comes through and says, "Well, I'm not a gunslinger anymore because blah 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 blah.
I've forgotten the face of my father."
Yeah. And so, as an audience member, this is hard because I know the source material really well, and I'm trying to have an open mind of what's happening, how they're changing the story, and be okay with it if it's a good story. But there's nothing to that. They don't explain why that's important whatsoever. And even the part of me that's like, no, well, he's like steadfast that he's the only gunslinger left. That's why he's on his journey.
And then that's why he's that's why right. That's why he's the last person who can try to save this. Mm-hmm. They allude to this war. Mm-hmm. Which would be like the war with Farson, but it's never explained. You never see anything from it. You see like one little scene where Roland's dad just gets killed by Walter O'Dim, and it doesn't really get explained. The inconsistency with Roland too is that like while he's in this mode of like all I care about is killing the Man in Black before the universe dies. It's like, but wouldn't that prevent the universe from dying? Isn't there like nobody points out, it's like, you're just obsessed with revenge. It's like, but if we kill Walter O'Dim, that will stop the bad things from happening. We never point that out. And then while he's in this like angsty teen mode, he's on the bus and he looks at a couple of like slutty looking girls. And then I'm going to get a comment that's like, how dare you slut shame those girls on the bus who propositioned him for sex or something. Yeah. And he'd be like, you have forgotten the face of your father. And it's like, he wouldn't say that if he's like, no, I'm not a gunslinger anymore.
If he's angsty gunslinger.
Take this cup away from me. I don't want it. Yeah.
But then you have
so there's like a big.
You have Jake interjecting. He's like, you should probably let me do all the talking.
You let me do all the talking. Yeah. And there's some little funny bits that I laughed like twice in the movie.
I mean, there were some funny stuff.
There's a couple of inside jokes. There's not the fan service didn't get too much in the way.
I would say the very beginning of the movie, the fan service got in the way. But then as the movie went on, maybe I was more acclimated to it, but especially in the beginning, they quote the first sentence from The Gunslinger, and I was just like, why?
But you're not telling that story. Why? It's like there's no Man in Black fleeing across the desert. Mm-hmm. The Man in Black is running Thunderclap.
Yeah.
The movie begins with Thunderclap, and it's funny because in the book, the people that are in Thunderclap like being there because they feel good about breaking the beam.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know. So it starts with Thunderclap, and the Man in Black is in charge of Thunderclap and is using Thunderclap to destroy the tower, which is never explained. Mm-hmm. Right, but that's how it begins. And then it's like the Man in Black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. It's like, well, clearly Walter O'Dim has already moved on and is doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
why did you even bring that
He's
quote
like
in?
the CEO of Apple, and Roland is like
Roland's wandering in the desert for no reason.
Now you're stuck in my story. A story full of plot holes and stuff.
Yeah, Roland's wandering in the desert for no reason. And then Jake shows up and is like, there's Roland. And it's like, how lucky, how fortuitous that I just got dropped in the middle of the desert and then found the guy I dreamt about. I dreamt about you, and he's like, I'm going to hold you over this cliff and be angsty. Yeah. I'm the angsty version of Roland. And also, I'll deliver my lines in a very awkward, unmatching tone.
Yeah. Well, it's like Roland's lines don't they don't match. Yeah, they don't match his tone. That's exactly right. Because in that scene, it's like, okay, I can understand why you're delivering him in this way. But then in other scenes, he goes,
long days. They're like, long days, pleasant nights. And he's like,
"May you have twice the number."
It's like all like depressed and angry. It's like, that's not how you would return a greeting to somebody. Like, that's weird. And it's not, it'd be like saying, "Hi, how are you?" And it's like, "I'm great." Yeah. Like, well, okay, well, if you're going to be angry at us, sir, then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, while we're talking about characters, talk about acting.
Well, before we talk about acting, let's talk about
Man in Black.
Yeah, Walter O'Dim.
Played by Matthew McConaughey.
I was actually really excited about that cast. I thought he was going to do a really good job. It was really flat.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey didn't sell me on Walter O'Dim at all.
No.
He didn't. You know, there was a couple good moments where like you kind of got the idea that he was like particularly wicked when he gets like, but I think it was really a function of cinematography, not Matthew McConaughey. But he gets like really like close to her face and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's like you could have had me do it and been like, dude, Stu is the man in black.
Stu is the man in black. Yeah, there that scene where he's convincing the mother, Jake's mother, to show him the pictures.
By mind raping her.
But yeah,
another unexplained power.
And he kind of. That was actually a good scene where he convinces her to.
Yeah, so that one was kind of convincing. Now,
but before that, there's just a lot of him walking around delivering lines that I don't think the lines are particularly bad, but the way he delivers them are
weird.
So.
They don't match the line.
Yeah.
And that's I felt the same way about Idris Elba as Roland. I know a lot of people made a big deal over the fact that they cast a black actor in what was definitely a white role in the books. He was explicitly white with blue eyes. That he looked like Clint Eastwood. That's something that Stephen King said explicitly. Now, this is a different version of Roland maybe, and it's like, okay, I'm going to let it go and experience this as a black character. I actually think Idris Elba's a good actor, and he didn't act this part well. In my opinion, his performance was completely uneven with what was happening in the story and with the lines that he was delivering. It's like, I don't know what the director was telling him. It might have been a fault of direction, where they're like, you need to be really angry and angsty all the time. It's like, you need to be angrier. You got to have way full of angst. We're talking like, I want you to take Keanu Reeves and multiply him by 100. That's how angsty I want you.
And then be 17 again.
You know, it's like, I want you to be Hayden Christensen from episode 3. You know,
nobody could be that angsty though.
Yeah, he was less angsty than that.
He was less.
But it's like, it didn't match the character. So I actually didn't think it was a good performance of his, and I don't think he's a bad actor. I think it's just didn't fit the role. He was miscast.
And I think
Matthew McConaughey was miscast too.
Yeah,
the boy Jake was fine.
He was fine. He was, but if he was, this is again, I think there was a mistake in direction, because it felt like on the one hand it was a YA movie, on the other hand, he's not the main character. He's the viewpoint character, and he doesn't. I don't know.
He doesn't act the plot.
And not only that, he's not.
He's kind of along for the ride.
He's exactly. Yeah. He's along for the ride. He's not.
And that's how it was. That's how it was in the original story. It's like Jake was kind of along for the ride. Roland was the actor, but we couldn't kind of decide on those things.
Yeah.
There's another thing about dialogue. So it's like, whenever the kids are there, they're like, "Sup, dude? Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude." They said "dude" a lot. It's like a 50-year-old, like, what a 14-year-old would talk like this. My 14-year-old says stuff like this a lot. You know, and I'm imagining like some 50-year-old screenwriter like in El Segundo somewhere being like, the 14-year-olds down at the high school say all this kind of stuff, so I'm going to write that in. And the kids deliver it. They're probably looking at the lines, they're like,
this is the stupidest
thing. They're like, this is the dumbest thing ever. And
this is stuff my dad would say.
This is stuff my dad says to me. He's like, "Come here, dude." You know, it's like, I don't know. It's not that my kids don't say "dude."
Yeah.
It's just a very California thing. Yeah. And it's supposed to be set in New York. I'm like, I'm not imagining these New York teens acting quite like this. And anyway, so that's that. So that's kind of the problems with the characters. We don't understand the characters because we don't have enough of the setting. So the characters act erratically and don't seem to act consistently at all. We don't know how powerful they are. We don't know why they're doing things. Sometimes they pull things out and you're like, why did that happen? Why is he doing that? I didn't know he could do that. Wow, I guess he's like a gun wizard.
Yeah. Well, and you see, they reveal that Jake is like ultra psychic. Which
Yeah,
is
he
kinda
has
cool.
the Shining, and they just call it
Shiny.
the Shine.
Oh, the shine. Yeah.
He's like, he has the Shine. It's like,
Yeah.
the Shining. Just call it the Shining, guys.
Yeah.
It's okay. They're both Stephen King properties.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, we can bridge that gap. But then Walter O'Dim has magics. Specifically, he has magics. He doesn't have the shine.
He has magic.
He has magics. So are they the same or are they different?
Yeah, and who is Walter O'Dim?
He's Randall Flagg.
Yeah, but we don't really get an idea of who he is or why he's doing
Yeah,
it.
we don't understand his motivations whatsoever.
So this is going long. So let's hop over to plot, and then we'll try to tie up with anything else that's left over. So the plot executes itself.
And the characters are kind of along for the ride.
Yeah, there's no B story and there's no C story.
Which honestly I'm okay with because
There wasn't room for it.
For a
it's a
95-minute
movie, 95-minute movie. There was no room for a B or C story. They just had the A story, and I didn't care about a B or C story.
Yeah.
I didn't care about it at all, and I'm glad they didn't try to put it in.
And with as many flaws as we've pointed out, I kept my interest the whole time.
Yeah, I was never not interested. I was never like bored with the movie, which is more than I can say about most movies.
Yeah.
And like I said, depending on what you compare it to, it's great.
Yeah.
And depending on what you compare it to, you're going to think it's garbage. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's true of anything that's not the absolute tippy tip top of like movies.
Yeah.
And even then, somebody's going to hate them. It's like, it's like, oh, Braveheart's a great movie. We can all agree on that. I'm like, actually, let me talk about the costumes. And they're like, you're really going to talk about the costumes? Like, they're wearing their kilts backwards. And they're not even wearing kilts. They're wearing their belted plaid backwards 100 years before anyone did it.
Yeah.
That's probably loud on the microphone. So yeah, the plot here's the plot. I'm dreaming about this dude. Oh crap, now I'm there. Now, this is an interesting thing, is like he has this vision of this house he's supposed to go to. He finds the house. He escapes from the people with the skin.
Well, essentially he posts a picture on 4chan, and like someone on 4chan tells him where the house is.
And it's just like, bro, that's my hood. I'm like,
yeah,
there's like a 50-year-old's like, this is totally how kids on 4chan talk. I'm write this in. And then it's like, comes back from revisions. It's like, it needs to sound more like a teenager. You're like, I had a couple bros and dudes in there. That's how teenagers talk.
Tubular.
Radical, bro. We say bro a lot.
We used to say bro ironically.
Yeah, and now we just realized that we're
just
bros.
say it.
That we're dude bros.
So yeah,
Yeah, and
I've having dreams about this
yeah, which is a really kind of bad device.
Well, not only that, so then he gets attacked. Then the house attacks him.
Yeah, the house attacks him, and it's totally a there's the gates to Moria, and it's like, better have a water demon attack us, so we have to run inside.
Yeah,
and that's what happens. It's like, all right, I opened a portal to I don't know where. Mm-hmm. No reasonable person would probably go through this, but I'm going to get attacked by a wood demon.
So I better go.
And the wood demon just stops. And later we'll be like, yeah, he has the Shining. That's why the wood demon stopped.
Yeah, and they do explain it, but it's a little...
In the moment, you're like, I don't know why that happened.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no obvious... It's not like, if it was like mind waves came out, or like looked at him and it shrank away from him, then you'd be like, oh, I wonder what that's about.
They could have communicated that a lot better, because they have to kind of go back and explain it, and that's not very good. I mean, it's fine in a book, honestly, but in a visual medium like film, it just doesn't work. Like, why would you have someone use dialogue as exposition when you could just have it happen?
So yeah, he there's a machine there, and he puts the 1919 in the machine. Yeah. Opens up a portal to the desert.
Some good fan service.
Yeah, opens up a portal to the desert where he coincidentally finds Roland like a day later.
Yeah.
And Roland's like, "Oh, you dream about stuff?
I'm going to kill you.
I'm going to kill you. Now I'm going to take you to a seer. Let's leave the desert." And then later it's like, that Roland, the guy who's been wandering around in the desert for 20 years? It's like, why would he do it if he could just leave the desert? Yeah. I don't understand. Like, they couldn't decide what they wanted to do there, I guess. But then they go through the forest and like, this is a broken down amusement park, because that's a creepy Stephen King trope.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, now we're in now we're in now we're in Megaton. It's like, we have a portal here in Megaton, but if we use it, that's going to make the bad guys come. And then it's like,
and then the bomb will blow up.
And then it's like, we use it, and then the bad guys come, and it's like, why did we do this?
And then there's actually a really cool scene where Roland shows his power. He like shoots a guy
using his ears. He's like, I'm listening. Yeah. I'm like Daredevil.
I don't shoot with my eyes. I shoot with my butthole.
I shoot with my mind. And then he kills the guy, and I'm sure that was intended to be impressive, but I saw it and I was like, really?
Yeah. Well, and it just
it's like, okay, I mean, Roland's a gun wizard.
It just goes to show you that they didn't show off Roland's true power at the beginning, so that every time he's more powerful at the end, you question it.
Yeah, here's what they should have done: is Jake should have gotten dropped into something, and then there were slow mutants everywhere, and then he's like, "Where am I?" And then Roland comes out, and he's like, and it's like, that was extremely impressive. He goes, "I'm a gunslinger. I've been training since I was 2 years old to fight like that." And then you have some exposition. It's like, "Oh, dude, you're like a knight of the round table, but you have guns and you're magical with them." Got it. Mm-hmm. Power level established. Let the plot commence.
Yep. Let the plot commence. Or you could have even done it in Jake's dreams, but they didn't. They just had Idris Elba with.
They just had him do stuff, and it's like his power kept
with
creeping
the Allstate guy.
Yeah,
and he's just like, I guess,
Allstate guy.
I guess I'm in good. I guess I'm in good hands, but you're dead. Then he just sits there and watches his father die.
Yeah, so Walter Dim comes up and goes like, "Stop breathing," and you're like, "Really? That's all it took?" And it's like he just falls over dead, and then Idris Elba's like, "Father, you are dying."
Why are you dying, Father?
Why are you? And then he's like, he looks up at Walter Dim and he's like, "You killed my father." It's like, so if somebody walked up and like killed my dad, and I'm like a trained killer, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm in the middle of a war, and we're just coming out of a battle, like we lost the battle. I'd be shooting at him, not like, "Father, why have you died?" And looking up and staring at the guy, being like,
"Face me!"
Are we going to do like a fight right now?
Have a fight.
Of course, there is an actual fight between Walter Dim and Roland at the end of the movie, which we always wanted in the books.
Yeah, it's actually really satisfying.
Yeah, it's very satisfying to see that. So that's good. But yeah, once that plot gets rolling, you get the idea. We're like, if we take a portal to New York and take a portal to Thunderclap, then we'll be able to resolve the plot for the entire books. Not quite, but you know. And then we get to the end, and it's like, I may need someone to come with me. And it's like, but didn't we resolve this whole...
Yeah, didn't we resolve the entire story arc?
Yeah, didn't we resolve everything?
Who's going to attack the Dark Tower now that Walter Dim is dead?
It's like, well, the Crimson King. It's like, but we didn't establish what the hell he was. He just had his name on a wall in a random burned down house.
So this is a problem we talked about in the Dark Tower movie. It was just... Not the Dark... in the Warcraft movie, is that you can't fan service yourself out of a plot hole. And that's kind of what happened here. It's like, well, we say the Crimson King. Don't you know that he's the ultimate bad guy? Well, no.
No, because you didn't remotely establish that.
You didn't establish that whatsoever.
You didn't. Nobody talked about it. Yeah, nothing like that happened. So overall, I know we spent a lot of time kind of crapping on it here, but overall, it executes its plot just fine. Most of the characters are okay if they're inconsistent. If you're looking for a young adult focused kind of movie that the primary character's a teenage boy and it's kind of a big adventure story from that perspective, then I think it'll be fine. I will say you don't need to see it in theaters.
Yeah,
there was nothing special about seeing it in a theater.
No,
it's not like Valerian or even like a Marvel movie where there's like an extra level to seeing it in a theatrical version.
Yeah, I thought. Yeah, you could save it you could wait till it's on Netflix.
Yeah, that'd probably be fine. All right, any other closing remarks?
Buy my book.
Oh yeah, I don't have my books out.
I don't have my books out here, so
buy them. So actually, yeah, we have links down below,
and you can call us racist down here below too.
So he has an urban fantasy.
Yes.
Stephen King's
Dark
Tower is kind of
is kind of an urban fantasy.
This one is more urban fantasy, I think, than the books for sure.
It for sure
way
is
more urban
because
fantasy.
it's set in you've got
It's
a lot
mostly
in
set in New York. It's like, oh yeah, there's this other world, Midworld. Here's like Megaton.
Yeah.
You have radiation sickness.
You can't just leave. Don't take all those painkillers at once.
You can't just leave. This is a well-established movie trope.
Yeah.
Don't take all those painkillers. Wow, I feel great. What's this? It's sugar. It's like, oh my god, it's almost like this is from the movie Thor.
Now,
what's it called? Coffee. Oh, I like it.
Now, Roland does like Coca-Cola in
Yeah, that's true.
in
That's
the
actually
books.
true.
And it's just they don't want a product placement, but you can see it's a Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Actually, I think they did that in He-Man. Or
Did
what was
they?
it, Masters of the Universe?
Oh, in Masters of the
Yeah,
Universe,
I think they
yeah.
did that in that one too.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's
That's
a well-established movie trope. So yeah, overall, it depends on your expectations. It's worth a watch on Netflix for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
And if you're like dying to go out to the movie theater, it'll be fun.
as far as the Dark Tower canon, it brings nothing to the table.
Yeah.
It just doesn't bring anything cool to the table at all. So there you go. Thanks for watching. You can buy my books down below. I have them linked down below. Water of Awakening is my current fantasy novel that came out less than a month ago. Actually, it feels like years ago, but it came out less than a month ago. It's still 99 cents on Amazon for the ebook, or you can get the paperback for $9.99. Prophet of the Godseed is going to be free for a while. That's my hard sci-fi book. You can check that out.
Immortal Fear is 99 cents right now. You can get the paperback for $9.99, and there's lots of cool military style gunfights in that, and then you get some cool melee fighting at the end.
Yeah, and plenty of mythology.
Plenty of mythology for your urban fantasy. As well.
And you can still get Muramasa Blood Drinker if you join my mailing list. I'm actually going to give that one away to my mailing list pretty soon. So there's an encouragement to do it, and I'm going to have a giveaway for Immortal Fear down below too in the comments. So check that out. It's an Amazon giveaway. You can get a free copy of it. And thank you so much for watching. This has been Stu.
And this is Jay.
Find me at davidvstewart.com, dbspress.com.
You can find me at matthewjwellman.com.
All right, see you guys next time. They have forgotten the face of their fathers.